right, it's 9 o'clock. Yes. Yes. All right. All right, good morning. Let's see, quick announcement. The teen class is going to be meeting in the balcony. I just was given notice, so if the teens could go upstairs if they would like to join in the balcony, that's up to them. Thank you. All right, so we are doing this summer grown-up lessons from children's classics. I will not be using the screen, so that is for I think a VBS little presentation, but not for me. So no worries about that. There'll be no technology used with me today. All right, so children's classics. This week we are going to be discussing Balaam and the donkey. Now, Balaam and the donkey it's a great lesson. It seems like it's custom made for children. I mean, you just can't go wrong with Balaam and the donkey, right? I mean, you have a talking animal. How many times does that happen in the Bible? Twice. And the first one was a serpent deceiving us into, all sorts of sin. So that's not as good. So we have a talking donkey, all right? So, I mean, clearly this should be a kid's story, right? But it's not. It's actually really, really hard to teach children. This one actually seems like it should be a slam dunk, but yet it's so easy to get this one wrong. It's so easy to just miss the point. I'm pretty sure that there are times I taught this and not wanting to get the point wrong, I ended up just doing the narrative and didn't have much of a point, because you get to the end of it and the children, if you just read chapters 22, 23, and 24, where most of the story of Balaam, the donkey, Balak, the cursing or blessing of Israel, that whole story is in those 3 chapters. And in those 3 chapters, you get to the end and go, so what's wrong with Balaam? What did he do wrong? I mean, he seems like a perfectly great guy. He seems like he obeys God. He listens. He does what he's supposed to do. I mean, sure, he kind of misses an angel of the Lord in front of him. But other than that, he seems to be a pretty upstanding guy. So what's the problem? Why is it that in Micah 6, 2 Peter 2, Revelation 2, where else? Jude 11. I mean, all these places, he's talked as a really bad guy, a false prophet, bad guy. But yet in these chapters, he doesn't look that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the story. We're going to see what happens. There are some little hints in there, because any false prophet, while he's trying to appear righteous and obey, does always give a little bit of hints. And then we're going to kind of see, where does Balaam completely fall off the rails? Where does he actually go wrong? What is the problem with Balaam? And we'll get into, of course, we'll throw in what I teach the kids on this story as much as possible. But I am still getting good at this. And I will say this story I'm actually very grateful for Corey to allow this series of lessons this week, this summer, because being able to dig into this story and understand what really is happening with Balaam will allow you to go back, teach your children, knowing what actually happened, what's really wrong with Balaam. Now, how do we take that and how do we turn that into a children's lesson, teach them what they need to know in their life, and that's important. And yes, I've taught children so long that is kind of always in the forefront of my mind. How do I translate this story into something I can teach first graders? So you'll get that a lot, but that's okay. So we've done kind of a series of what the story is not about. Now I'm actually going to be a little more cautious with this, because the story it's so easy to get it wrong that I would like to give grace to some of the people that pull some of the wrong lessons. There are some ridiculous things, all right? No, this is not about animal rights. No, this is not about don't beat your animals. All right, that if you're getting that out of the story, you really haven't even read the chapters at all. It is also, if you come to the end of this and you say, Balaam was a great guy, he's just a guy that obeys God. We should listen and obey God. You probably missed it, because that means you're ignoring the parts of the Bible that call him a false prophet. And so if you're ignoring part of the Bible to make your lesson, you're probably not doing it right. All right, so let's see. So let's see, what else does it not mean? God uses a donkey to save his people. Right, you're focusing on the wrong things again. Let's see God's voice and follow it like the gentle donkey, not like Balaam. Again, a lot of credit to the donkey on this one. If you're giving a lot of credit to the donkey, or you're thinking Balaam's a great guy, you're probably not getting it right. So let's not focus on those things. We're going to focus on the message of God, God's sovereignty, God's deliverance, God's protection for his people. We're going to focus on Balaam for who he is. He is in fact a false prophet. Why is he a false prophet? We'll go through that, and then we'll come to some key takeaways. We'll pull in how the New Testament describes it and try to put everything together, and that's kind of the goal for the day. All right, so little background information. What has been happening when Balaam has his little adventure with his animal? Well, first off, before this, the people of Israel are slowly but surely getting to that next generation. They're coming into the generation that's going to go with Joshua and surround the walls of Jericho and everything that we learned about last week, which, by the way, was very, very good. You should go back and watch that one. He did a great job of that. All right, so all that, it's leading up to it. Now, they have a few hiccups on the way. They have a problem. They have a problem from where they were going to go around the land of Edom. The people became impatient on the way. They spoke to God and against Moses. This is chapter 21, and this is the story of the bronze serpent, where they start complaining. They say, "Why have you brought us out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there was no food and water, and we loathe this worthless food." So they're complaining about the manna. They kind of, you see this new generation come up, and they start to complain, and God starts to punish them. The fiery serpents come in, they start biting them. We're not going to go into the whole story. God sets up the bronze serpent that they have to go to and look at. And what we see here is a slightly different change here, because in this time, the people admit, "We have sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord and against you." So unlike a lot of the past rebellions, that you see some level of repentance, God then takes them, and we see the defeat of Sihon, king of the Amorites. We see the defeat of Og, the king of Bashan. And these are events that come in and come into play when it comes to Balak, the king of the Moabites. So the king of the Moabites sees all this happening, and he is going to have to do something about this. All right. Okay. So who is Balaam? Okay. So some people see Balaam different ways. All right. Some people see him straight as a false prophet, someone who, when he calls the Lord Yahweh or Jehovah, that he's actually really just trying to look holier than he is. But some people see Balaam as someone who was a prophet of God that turned to riches, that decided that, wow, not only am I getting all these great insights from God, but I can actually use it to make a profit. So there's different views of how Balaam is seen. I tend to see Balaam, honestly, I tend to see it as irrelevant, because one of the things that we see from the Old Testament and prophets in general is that a prophet of the Lord needs to maintain the fidelity to the Lord. I mean, we see times where even false prophets in the Kings, and the name's going to escape me, but it's during the Elisha time where the prophet comes in, is told not to do something, and then another false prophet says, "No, you can," and God ends up killing him, because when God tells you to do something, that's supposed to be it. And so we see Balaam as someone who is, the word of the Lord seems to be a little more variable. Maybe God will change his mind. Maybe we can do something with this. But it is very self-focused. So he's a kind of a very, very self-focused prophet that God is able to use. Which is the other side that we're going to find out about Balaam, is that God's going to use him anyway. Forcibly at times, but God is going to use him for his purpose. Okay. So let's start going through the passage, And we're going to, there's a lot here. I would love to just read through the whole thing, but I don't think we're going to be able to, just for time's sake, just because it is actually we're going to have almost 4 chapters worth to go through. So we'll just start, I'm going to start with the beginning, set the stage, and then we'll move forward. We'll skip around a little bit to get to the points. All right, so chapter 22 starts. Then the people of Israel set out and encamped in the plains of Moab, beyond the Jordan at Jericho. And Balak, the son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. And Moab was in great dread of the people, because they were many. Moab was overcome with fear of the people of Israel. And Moab said to the elders of Midian, "The horde will now lick up all that is around us, as the ox licks up the grass of the field." So Balak, the son of Zippor, who was king of Moab at that time, sent messengers to Balaam, the son of Beor, at Pethor, which is near the river in the land of the people of Ammar, to call him, saying, "Behold, a people has come out of Egypt. They cover the face of the earth, and they are dwelling opposite me. Come now, curse this people for me, since they are too mighty for me. Perhaps I shall be able to defeat them and drive them from the land. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you curse is cursed." All right, so that kind of gives the whole setup. There's the people. He sees how powerful they are. He sees what God's done with them. He doesn't want this to happen to his people, so he's going to take a little preemptive strike against them and try to get this man Balaam to curse them. And the other point that this brings out about Balaam is that he has a reputation of being good at this, at being somewhat successful at cursing people. Was that because he actually was successful at blessing people previously? It's not really clear, but in all the world, he's kind of this international hero of Balak. At least he has a reputation as far away as Moab that he can do this. So he's going to ask Balaam to come and curse the people of Israel. Okay, so verse 7, chapter 22, verse 7. So the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian departed with the fees for divination in their hand, and they came to Balaam and gave him Balak's message, and he said to them, "Lodge here tonight, and I will bring back word to you as the Lord speaks to me." So the princes of Moab stayed with Balaam, and God came to Balaam and said, "Who are these men with you?" And Balaam said to God, "Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab, has sent to me, saying, Behold, the people have come out of Egypt, and it covers the face of the earth. Now come, curse them for me. Perhaps I shall be able to fight against them and drive them out." All right, verse 12, this is an important one. God said to Balaam, "You shall not go with them. You shall not curse the people, for they are blessed." So God tells him, these people, you're not going to go with them. You're not to curse the people. They're blessed. Pretty clear. Pretty obvious. God makes it very, very clear what's going on here. So Balaam arose in the morning and said to the princes of Balak, "Go to your own land, for the Lord has refused to let me go with you." Now that's not exactly what God said. And this is kind of the first little hint that something's wrong. God said, don't go with them. Don't curse them. They're blessed people. And he says, the Lord refuses to let me go with you. And then the princes go back. So the princes of Moab rose and went back to Balak and said, "Balaam refuses to come with us." So it's a terrible game of telephone here. So God says, don't go with them, and gives them the reason that these people are blessed and they're not to be cursed. Balaam says, God refuses to let me go with you, but leaves out the reason. And then they tell the prince, Balaam refuses to come with us. Well, if the king of Moab hears Balaam refuses, and that's all he gets, and Balaam hasn't told the princes why. The princes haven't said anything else that the Lord's refusing. So Balak makes the very logical conclusion that we just need more money. More money. In fact, more money, more princes, more honorable princes. We'll send the best of the best to this guy, because if he's just refusing, then a little more, we'll just entice him a little bit more with a little bit extra. What could possibly go wrong? All right, so that's what they do. They gave him more. They sent the princes back. And this is one of those lines that people say, well, what is wrong with Balaam? Because Balaam's response to more princes, more honorable men coming to him, more money, it says, verse 18, though Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not go beyond the command of the Lord my God to do less or more. Okay, so that sounds exactly like the right answer he's supposed to give. That sounds perfect. I mean, what would be wrong with that answer? And then he says, so you too, please stay here tonight, that I may know what more the Lord will say to me. So far, anybody see any conflict in any of these statements that Balaam's saying? Eventually I'm going to mix up Balak and Balaam like over and over again. I'm not going to get this right the whole time. Any conflicts between these two statements? In verse 18, he says, he could give me a house full of silver and gold. I wouldn't be able to do anything against what the Lord my God says, but stay here tonight and I'll ask the Lord. Any conflicts in this? Dave?
It just seems like he's not letting God's word stand as it is. He's like hoping something's going to change and allow him to wiggle out of it.
Yeah, it's almost like this. Normally when you get a study Bible, the notes in the study Bible aren't really there to be funny. But I gotta tell you, I read with the ESV Study Bible's note on this verse. They must have just thought this was as ridiculous as possible, because the note was something to the effect of, not sure what was hard to understand about verse 12. Don't go. Don't curse them. They're blessed. And the ESV study note actually says, not sure what was hard to understand about verse 12. Like, well, what did he miss about this? It seemed really clear. But here he is telling the people, we can wait here tonight. What, maybe God will change his mind? That's what he's hoping. And this is kind of the first real crack in the armor you see. He looks really, really, authentic. I can't go against the Lord my God. But wait here, maybe he'll change his mind. So, all right. So then what does God say? Says, let's see. It says, I want to make sure that I got to make sure I stay with my handout too. So I have to remember that children don't get these handouts, so I get to just keep going with them. It's true. It makes it easier sometimes. Okay. So he asks them to stay here the night. So what happens? God says, well, if the men have come to call you, rise and go with them, but only do what I tell you. So does God allow Balaam to go with him? Does he go? Does God allow Balaam to go? He says, if the men call on you, go with them, but only say, let's see, but only, which verse was that? If the men have come to call on you, arise, go with them, but only do what I tell you. So Balaam rose in the morning and saddled his donkey and went with the princes of Moab. But God's anger was kindled because he went, and the angel of the Lord took his stand in the way as his adversary. Okay, so did God allow him to go or not? It seems a little conflicted here. It seems on one hand, God says, go ahead, but now I'm mad at you for going. So what's going on here? Thoughts on this? Probably one of the hardest parts of the entire lesson, by the way.
God had a conditional statement of if they call on you, but then he's like, sweet, green light, I'm gonna go.
That is actually one of the main ideas of why this was a problem. That's exactly one of them. there's this like conditional statement. There's this idea that God says, well, if the people are going to come and get you, but it never says the princes actually come back and get him. The princes probably figured this is a waste of their time. Remember, these men that showed up this time showed up with an immense amount of wealth to offer to him. And these are the most honorable princes of the country. Already, they made the trip all the way there. These are important people. These are not people that just take trips for no reason. Okay? They have people for that. And so this idea that they would have to come and beg him, I'm not sure that these princes are people that beg. So the idea that this conditional statement might be God just knowing these people aren't going to beg you to come. And yet, first thing in the morning, here he is, he's up, he's got his stuff packed, he's got his donkey ready, he's on his way. Because, I mean, maybe. And maybe if I catch up to them, they'll ask me to go with them. So that is actually one. The other way people read this is that God did give him permission as long as he's doing what he said, and that the angel actually doesn't immediately stop as an adversary, but as he was going, his heart changed. That's the other way people read this, that as he's going, his heart changed, so God sent someone to keep him on the straight and narrow, shall we say, which actually is what the donkey's going to be on. All right, so here we are. We're at the point where we have the donkey, okay? And the entire humorous scene here with the donkey and Balaam. So let's read this because this is great. Anybody want to read this? Because this is the fun part of the lesson here. Anybody want to read it? Go ahead.
Starting verse 1.
You can start with 22.
Okay. But God's anger was kindled because he went, and the angel of the Lord took his stand in the way as his adversary. Now he was riding on the donkey, and his 2 servants were with him. And the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with a drawn sword in his hand. And the donkey turned aside out of the road and went into the field. And Balaam struck the donkey to turn her into the road. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path between the vineyards and a wall on either side. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she pushed against the wall and pressed Balaam's foot against the wall. So he struck her again. Then the angel of the Lord went ahead and stood in a narrow place where there was no way to turn either to the right or to the left. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she lay down under Balaam. And Balaam's anger was kindled, and he struck the donkey with his staff. Then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, "What have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times?" And Balaam said to the donkey, "Because you have made a fool of me. I wish I had a sword in my hand, for then I would kill you." And the donkey said to Balaam, "Am I not your donkey, on which you have ridden all your life long to this day? Is it my habit to treat you this way?" And he said, "No." All
right. So here we have this very humorous story of Balaam walking along, and at first the donkey sees the angel of the Lord. Balaam does not. And so what does the donkey do? He turns aside, tries to avoid the angel. And of course, Balaam, not seeing it, not knowing what's going on, doesn't think, I wonder why my donkey did that. Instead, he's very focused on what he wants, and he strikes the donkey. And then the donkey, what's humorous is that the angel of the Lord actually moves, because the angel of the Lord doesn't just stand there. The angel actually, disappears. I'm not really sure. But the angel is not there anymore, and God allows the donkey to move forward again for no other purpose than to do this all over again, to really show Balaam how blind he is on this, and how focused he is on his own endeavors instead of what the work of the Lord is. And so it goes to another side, another part, where the donkey is going through a narrower path between the vineyards with a wall on either side, and the donkey sees the angel, and there's not a lot of room So he pushes up against the wall to try to avoid the angel. Again, Balaam doesn't see the angel, the donkey does. And he hurts his foot. And so Balaam is more angry about his foot than wondering what is wrong with my donkey, and strikes him again. And finally, there's this place where it's so narrow as he's traveling that there's nowhere to go. The angel's right there. And this is actually kind of the wildest part, because there's nowhere else to go. All he has to do is look up. God did not, this angel is not invisible, but God is blinding his sight to noticing anything about what's around him. And the donkey sees it and just lays down, just gives up. I can't go anywhere. And this time the angel doesn't move. So the donkey never gets up. He strikes him. He has this conversation with him, which again, your donkey is talking to you.
Yeah, he doesn't miss a beat.
Yeah, just right. He's just like, well, I'll just respond. Like there's nothing. He doesn't, not you know.
I think there's something to that. Like, he is so angry and so focused. He doesn't even miss a beat. And it's like, you know, me when somebody cuts me off in traffic and I'm talking to nobody. But like, he's like that. Like, he just doesn't miss a beat and just starts talking to the donkey.
He starts talking
He's
right
probably
back.
already talking to the donkey.
Actually, that's a good point. He may have been having conversation with the donkey the whole time. From the first time he whacked, don't know what's wrong with you. But he's
Right.
talking to the donkey anyway, and this time the donkey responds. And so now all of a sudden, it goes from a monologue to a dialogue, and he doesn't miss a beat. So he starts talking to the donkey, and how embarrassing for him. But yet, how angry have I ever been at some points where I was so focused that if my cat talked to me, I may have just yelled at it. But
But I think
Yeah.
it serves your point, right? Like, why is he so angry? He's so angry. The narrative doesn't really tell us, but he's so angry because he really does want this honor and this money, and it's the opportunity of a lifetime.
yeah, it is. It's an opportunity of a lifetime. That's a very good way of putting it. This is his opportunity to really take everything that he's built up to this point and set himself up for life. And yet, he knows deep down inside, don't go with them. Do not curse these people, for I have blessed them. And those words must be ringing in his ear over and over again, just aggravating him, because if God isn't going to do it, it's not going to happen. And he knows this. And he knows he's not going to be able to. And that is just going to anger him even more. He's going to go, he's going to hope against hope, because sin will make you do crazy things. All right? Just hoping that maybe this time God won't be God. Just one time. I just need you to not care about, not lying and not changing and all those God attributes. Just once. Just this moment. And he is very, very angry. So here we are. He finally strikes the donkey. And then, verse 31, then the Lord opened the eyes of Balaam, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his sword drawn in his hand. And that had to be a sight, because that immediately refocuses him. The anger immediately dissipates, and it turns into fear. And he bows down and falls on his face. The angel of the Lord, verse 32, and the angel of the Lord said to him, "Why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I have come to oppose you, because your way is perverse before me. The donkey saw me and turned aside before me these 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, surely just now I would have killed you and let her live." So our question, verse 7, and the verses here, who's the true seer? Balaam, who's supposed to be paid for it, or the donkey? And really, the donkey wins this one. And really, I think that is also God. The reason God lets an animal speak to him is because he really is trying to show Balaam that the donkey is actually more focused on the Lord than he is. He's seeing what the seer cannot see. The person who is being hired as a seer cannot see what an animal can see. And he points this out to him. Okay. And And I also noticed, by the way, that Balaam has, when the donkey asks, "Why have you struck me 3 times?" He's like, "Strike you. If I had a sword, I would have killed you. I'm so angry with you." But the angel says, "Why'd you strike your donkey 3 times?" And it's nothing but apologies now. Well, Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, "I have sinned, for I did not know that you stood in the road against me. Now, therefore, if it is evil in your sight, I will turn back." I will turn back. Yeah.
One thing that always makes me chuckle about the story is, like, Balaam does not go, talking donkey.
Yes.
Right? Like, he just sort of, he's so ripping angry. That he ignores the fact that his donkey is speaking to him and just gets into a fight with the donkey. Right?
He just starts arguing with his animal instead of realizing it. And then when it's finally pointed out to him by the angel that you're fighting with a donkey, now all of a sudden I'm so repentant.
Yeah.
Right.
And the other thing that I think about when I read this passage is Romans 1. Because here, it doesn't say anywhere that God closed the eyes of Balaam, but it does say that God opened the eyes of Balaam. And when we think about what Romans 1 says about the sinner and about what they do, they deceive themselves with unbelief.
Yeah, the connection with Romans 1 is good with the self-deception versus versus God opening your eyes there.
And so we see here that Balaam is so obsessed with his self-image and his own opportunities that he has closed his own eyes.
Yeah. Good. Dave.
I wanted to ask about that because you have made a fool of me comment that he makes.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't reference where the princes are. Can we guess that maybe they're on the path, like right in front of him, and then the angel separates them, and he's trying to keep up with them, and then he looks like a fool because he can't follow them? Like, what's the deal with the princes? Do we know?
Do you have
I
a?
was asking myself the same question.
Well,
Here, but 35.
Well, actually, I'm going to go back to 22 because it says he's riding with his donkey and his 2 servants were with him. So the Bible makes a point to say that Balaam has 2 servants with him, but has no comment where the princes are, which means if the princes were right with him, you would have thought that, well, the Bible made a point to include the small entourage he had, which is him and his 2 servants, but not that the princes were nearby. So I did notice that. And what verse did you notice?
35 says, "Go with the man, but speak only the word that I tell you." So Balaam went on with the princes of Balak. So
Right. So
it seems clear enough that the princes didn't depart and days later.
yes,
Some moderate distance between them.
there looks like there is some distance between them, between Balaam and the princes, but not such a great distance. Maybe he's trying to catch up to them.
Right, like they didn't leave 100% without him.
Right, and or Balaam at least took off after them, but still at this point the Lord lets him go. Okay, so I'm going to move on because I really do want to get to the oracles and kind of go through those just a little bit, because this is actually chapter 23 is, in the grand scheme of things, really the point. All right, it's actually not the donkey, it's not 22, even though I've now spent most of the time on 22. We're going to spend less time on 23, but yet chapter 23 is more the point, because now Balaam comes to Balak. Balak's very excited that Balaam is there. He thinks there is a shot, because Balak just sees this as a normal transactional process. I call my seer, they curse, I feel better, my army feels better, everybody does well. And Balaam is the one that knows the truth and is struggling with it. But here we have, the first thing he does is Balaam says to Balak, "I want you to make me 7 altars in one of the high places." They go to one of the high places of Baal. He says, "I want 7 altars with 7 bulls and 7 rams. I want this large offering. I will go speak to the Lord and bring you back a word." Again, chapter 22, verse 12. We already know the answer. But yet, here he is going to speak a word. And now we see God using an evil man with evil motives to bless his people. There is not going to, this isn't going to be a terrible surprise for what's about to happen here. God is going to use someone who is his heart set on his own benefit to bless his people. All right, and the blessing is as such. Verse 7. And Balaam took up his discourse and said, from Aram Balak brought me, the king of Moab, from the eastern mountain. Come, curse Jacob for me. Come, denounce Israel. How can I curse whom God has not cursed? How can I denounce whom the Lord has not denounced? For from the tops of the crags I see him. From the hills I behold him. Behold, the people dwelling alone and not counting itself among the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob? Who can number a fourth part of Israel? Let me die the death of the upright, and let my end be like his. And so we see in a few things, I kind of pulled out some key themes of each oracle here. And so the first one, Balaam initiates this sacrifice. 7 altars, 7 bulls, 7 rams. So Balaam is the one who initiates that sacrifice. And then in this, we see that in this oracle, first thing that we point out is that Balak is the one initiating this. Balak has requested the people of Israel be cursed. All right, so he says right there, where is this coming from? Balak requested, come curse Jacob for me, come denounce Israel. So that's one of the key themes, all right, is where this is coming from. And then God's response to that how can I curse whom God has not cursed? And how can I denounce whom the Lord has not denounced? So we find out that Balaam can't curse him. Balak requested it. He cannot do that. And then we have the end part where it talks about verse 10. Who can count the dust of Jacob or number a fourth part of Israel? Clearly that's a reference to God's promise to Abraham that he will be as the dust of the earth. And then it says, let me die the death of the upright, and let my end be like his. So there's this desire to be part of the righteous. There's a lot of things you could go into. You could go real deep into that particular part of the verse. Die the death of the upright, let my end be like his. What in death is different between the upright and the non-upright? I mean, there's a clear reference to that there's life past this life, and that being upright in death is different than being unrighteous in death. And so this is all associated with the people of Israel. So that's kind of the first one, okay? And so now we see the reactions to it, okay? Verse 13, and Balak said to him, please come to me from another place which you may see them. You see only a fraction of them and shall not see them all. Actually, wait a minute, I should have gone back to 11. That's where his reaction starts, because that's his second part of his reaction. I'm sorry, my bad. All right, verse 11. And Balak said to Balaam, what have you done to me? I took you to curse my enemies, and behold, you have done nothing but bless them. You had one job. That's it. You had one job. I had one job. I paid you so much. One job. And you didn't do it. You did exactly the opposite of what I asked you to do. So he's very upset with this, because he had an immense amount of expense bringing this guy all the way over, only to have him do exactly the opposite of what he requested. And what's bizarre is that Balaam answers and says, must I not take care to speak what the Lord puts in my mouth? First off, he says, not my fault. It's God's fault. God did this. Don't blame me. All right? This isn't my fault. I can't do it. Now, sounds very pious, but at the same time, it's also a cop-out. He's telling me, I would love to help you out. And Balak's response is, all right, well, let's try this again. He's so excited to try this again. You know what? It must be. Because in the pagan world, gods can change their mind at any whim of a moment. Maybe a location's the problem. Maybe if we go somewhere else and you see the people differently, maybe then it'll work. So he says, please come with me to another place from which you may see them. You see only a fraction of them, and shall not see all of them. Then curse them for me from there. And he takes them from the field to the top of Pisgah. Balak initiates this. This time Balak's like, all right, make me 7 more altars. Let's get the animals on them, the bulls and the ram. The initiator of this second sacrifice is all Balak. He's driving this. He's giving this. He's giving this another shot. He is not ready to give up on his investment yet. All right, and so let's see what happens in the second oracle. The second oracle says, verse 18, and Balak took up his discourse and said, rise, Balak, and hear. Give ear to me, O son of Zippor. God is not man that he should lie, or a son of man that he should change his mind. Has he said, and will he not do it? Or has he spoken, and he will not fulfill it? Behold, I receive a command to bless, and he has blessed, and I cannot revoke it. He has not beheld misfortune in Jacob, nor has he seen trouble in Israel. The Lord is their God, the Lord their God is with them, and the shout of a king among them. God brings them out of Egypt, and is for them like the horns of the wild ox. For there is no enchantment against Jacob, no divination against Israel. Now it shall be said of Jacob and Israel, what has God wrought? Behold, a people, as a lioness it rises up, and as a lion it lifts itself. It does not lie down until it has devoured the prey and drunk the blood of the slain. All right, so key themes out of this one. First off, in response to Balak moving venue and thinking that's going to change things, he says, who is God that he doesn't lie like man lies. He doesn't change his mind like man changes his mind. He doesn't just change what he's going to do. He says it happens. That's the way it works. And that's the first thing. God does not lie. He doesn't change. And that's the first thing that he informs Balak of this time. And another key point that I noticed out of this is that it says, he has not beheld misfortune in Jacob, nor has he seen trouble in Israel. The Lord, their God, is with them, and the shout of the king is among them. There's no reason to. There's no reason to. God has set his people up, and he is not going to curse them. And it also points out another key theme is that all these divinations, all these enchantments are not going to succeed. All right? And so what is Balak's response here? Balak says, do not curse them at all, and do not bless them at all. Just stop talking. You're not helping. All right? So his response is, stop talking. Just stop. And of course, what does Balaam do? Points to God. Says, yep. Did I not tell you all that the Lord says I must do? I really wish I'd heard him say that. I would love to hear the tone of his voice on that one. Is he happy about it? Proud about it? Disappointed? Everything God tells me, I have to say. Or, everything God tells me, I have to say. I would love to hear the tone on that one. But we're not given that, so this is what the Lord has revealed to us, and this is what we teach. But this is one of the reasons why it's really hard, because he says all the right things, but yet his attitude underlying it seems to be so sinful. So, Balak's response to that is, again, let's try one more time. And they set it up a third time. Balaam says, okay, we'll try one more time. 7 altars. And this time they go to Peor. All right, they go to the high place. They go to the most honorable place of Baal. All right, and this time, if it doesn't work this time, well, of course it'll work. Balak has perfect faith in this. We'll see how that goes. All right, third one. He gets the altars. He gets the sacrifices. He stands there, and this time, the first 2 times, he says, I'm going to go talk to God. I'll bring you back what he says. This time, Balaam doesn't do that. He doesn't go off. He doesn't go off to talk to God. He's like, I'm not even going to leave. I'm not even going to go off and talk to God. I'm just going to look out in the wilderness. And I'm not sure why he's doing that. Does he just not want to know? Does God just catch him and tell him what he wants him to hear? Because this time, God just puts the words right into his mouth. He does not give him, he doesn't tell him what to say. He puts the words directly into his mouth. It's the oracle of Balaam, the son of Beor, the oracle of man whose eye is opened. By the way, that's really kind of funny seeing with the whole donkey story. Now his eye is opened because the Lord has opened his eye. The oracle of him who hears the words of God and who sees the vision of the Almighty, falling down with his eyes uncovered. How lovely are your tents, O Jacob, your encampments, O Israel, like palm groves that stretch afar, like gardens beside a river, like aloes that the Lord has planted, and like cedar trees beside the waters. Water that flows from his buckets, and his seed shall be in many waters. His king shall be higher than Agag. His kingdom shall be exalted. God brings him out of Egypt, and is for him like the horns of the wild ox. He shall eat up the nations, his adversaries, and shall break their bones in pieces, and pierce them through with his arrows. He crouched, he laid down like a lion, and like a lioness who rouses him up. Blessed are those who bless you, and cursed are those who curse you. Okay, so first off, it starts off with how wonderful Israel is. This is God's blessing on his people. God's blessing on his people is because are they blessed because of anything they did? No, they're blessed because God has chosen to bless them. God has chosen it. God has put his favor on this people. That's why they're blessed. That's why they're wonderful. It's not because of anything they did. We see that God's protection and provision for Israel, that he's going to protect them, and they're going to be able to crush their adversaries. And then at the end, it ends with, blessed are those who bless you, and cursed are those to curse you. Again, this reference to the promise of Abraham back in the beginning. His first oracle pointed out that his seed will be like the dust of the earth. And now here at the end, blessed are those who bless you, and cursed are those who curse you. Well, I'm going to kind of quickly go through his final predictions. Balak's, by the way, his reaction is anger, dismay. He throws Balaam out of the country. Balaam points to God. He then gives a prediction of the future. It shows that there will be, in his prediction of the future, he refers to a star shall come out of Jacob, a scepter shall come out of Israel. He sees that the future kingdoms of Israel, those kingdoms are going to destroy Moab and the enemies that are around. And this is clearly pointing to the Davidic kingdom, but as part of the Davidic kingdom, as God's showing his promise of a savior from someone to curse crush the serpent's head, through the promise of Abraham that through his descendants all the nations will be blessed, to the promises of Judah that the scepter won't leave. Now you have Balaam pointing to a kingdom, the Davidic kingdom. The Davidic kingdom in 2 Samuel 7 points to an everlasting kingdom. So everything is now pointing to the Messianic kingdom one step at a time, and Balaam's oracle is part of that line that points up to him. All right, so I'm already late, but yet we haven't really gotten to the big problem, because Balaam doesn't leave here. He goes home. And most of the kids' lessons ends at the end of 24, because the Baal worship at Peor in chapter 25 is that's pretty brutal. But yet in chapter 31, verse 16, Moses is going over that event at Baal of Peor, and he says, "Behold, these on Balaam's advice caused the people of Israel to act treacherously against the Lord in the incident of Peor." So that a plague came among the congregation of the Lord. And so what we see in chapter 25, where the daughters of Moab come in, and let's see, it says, while Israel lived in Shittim, and the people began to whore with the daughters of Moab. And they invited the people to the sacrifice of their gods, and the gods ate and bowed down to their gods. So Israel yoked themselves to Baal of Peor, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. And the Lord said to Moses, "Take all the people, chiefs of the people, and hang them in the sun before the Lord." This is Balaam's actual legacy here, because he didn't get what he wanted, but he found a way. I mean, isn't that what, it's the same idea that the men in Daniel said, these men in Daniel 6:5 says, we shall not find any ground for complaint against this Daniel unless we find it against the connection with the law of his God. People have known for years that if you want to punish people of God, let God do it. Drive them to sin. And that's what he does. He advises them to send the daughters of Moab into Israel to cause them to sin. He can't curse them. But the people can curse themselves through sin. And this lesson and this advice is really what drove it. You have 2 Peter 2:15, forsaking the right way, they have gone astray, they have followed the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved gain from wrongdoing. Oh, he got paid all right, but it wasn't for cursing Israel. It was for driving them into sin. And this is what the lesson is. So takeaways, okay? You have the takeaway 1, false prophets. They will be driven by money, and they have no problems any way they do it. This false prophet, Balaam, drove the people to sin. It talks about in Revelation, it describes Balaam. It says, but I have a few things against you. You have some there who hold the teachings of Balaam, who taught Balak to put a stumbling block before the sons of Israel, so that they might eat food sacrificed to idols and practice sexual immorality. God does not take kindly to false prophets that put stumbling blocks before people to cause them to sin. And I think that is one of the that is probably the main takeaway, is the false prophet, and recognizing the false prophet and seeing the stumbling blocks that people put in the way of believers and non-believers, and trying to get people to go against God. And the world does this. Now, what do we teach the children? What do we teach the children? Well, we teach the children that God can actually use someone like this to bless his people. Forcibly. Using an animal, but he does. He can use anyone, but beyond just that, what God can use to bless his people, it's also a stark warning against false prophets, against those who would drive you to sin, and put stumbling blocks in front of you. All right, let's close in prayer. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this time, for this lesson. Thank you for your word and the warnings and the blessings inside of it. We thank you for giving us the story of Balaam, for the donkey, and for the warnings and advice to watch for stumbling blocks and to honor you in all. In Christ's name, amen. Let's see. Thank you. We have